Hello, class. Welcome to Wednesday, April 29th. And you're looking at the next edition of Learning from Abroad during COVID-19. So, hope all is well and that everything in your lives are fantastic, awesome, and great. So, this week we are focusing on the economic impact of COVID-19. I think this is kind of one of the main discussions that our leaders are having, not only in the state, but also across the country, about when to reopen, why to reopen, should the U.S., because we are a capitalist economy and a free society, do the things that other countries are doing. So I think we're seeing in Iowa, we're kind of the guinea pigs, us, Nebraska, South Dakota, some of the more rural states are saying, we're not hard locking down. We're letting our citizens roam about, and we're starting to see some effects of that with our packing plants being affected, and with Iowa producing about a third of the nation's pork processing. So once you butcher a hog or butcher an animal, it has to be packaged and then sent out to your grocery stores. And Iowa processes some of these plants, just one business processes about 60,000 hogs a day. 60,000. Okay, so what that means is across the entire country, we process about 1/3 or 33% of the nation's pork. So if Iowa shuts down our packing plants, that's 1/3 of the supply of pork that goes out to every single grocery store across the country is not there. And so that's a big deal. So that's why our state really wants to stay open. But when people are getting sick, it's you've got to assess the situation and say, when is it not time to do that? So that's kind of what we're talking about today, the economic impact. So as you can see, this week's slides, you're watching this message from me. Again, sorry, I just realized I didn't link the video from last week. I looked over it several times and screwed up. But this week you don't have a hyperdoc. You're just going to answer questions from the document. So I'll go over that in just one second. But this week's slides are as follows. So I will blow this up for you. Quarantine. I hate that word now. It's one of my least favorite words. But Wednesday, April 29th. Big announcement. I caught my biggest fish over the weekend. So there is positives in this. Social distancing, isolation, at a pond with just me and my family. I should have a picture of Colton here. I was fishing with Colton. He outfished me. He caught like 9 fish. I only caught like 3. So teaching my boy right, I guess. So, but this is the biggest bass I think I've caught. I think it tipped the scales just over 3.9, 4 pound. My scale isn't real accurate, so it was a 4 to 5 pounder. I mean, it was a hog. It was a mess. I mean, I'm a big person. You can see how big that fish was. So pretty happy about that. This week's Zoom meetings tomorrow. Well, it'll be today. Probably most of you will see it today, Wednesday at 2 o'clock for my AM classes. Here's the link to it. Password is Meade AM. Make sure it's capitalized. The AM is anyway, _. And then periods 5, 7, and 8. PM will be that link with the password PM. So I think that's the right meeting ID. I should double check that. I didn't post the first one. I don't think you need the meeting ID if you have the login, but I'll also put it in my email, so don't you worry about that. So I'll double check those things. Next, we have our answers to our surveys. Thank you so much for you guys taking that last week. First question was, how many hours a day do you spend on YouTube? 1 to 2 hours. Pretty normal. 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours. So most of you spend 1 to 2 hours. What's YouTube? Funny. Mr. White's put a lot of time into this, and I appreciate him coming back with the answers. How much are you missing school right now? And surprisingly, sometimes but not always, I think most of us feel that way on the daily. A lot of you, though, 30% of you said a lot, and then a little bit. So none of you said not at all, which is awesome. We love you too. So we hear you. How worried are you personally about COVID? Some of you said not at all. A lot of you said a little bit. Some of you said somewhat. I think probably because your parents are working or out and about. And then, about 10% of us said a lot. So we see you, we hear you, and we're trying to give you as much info on this deal as we can. How much time a day are you spending reading? What's reading? I kind of feel like that sometimes. I read at least 2 hours a week. Yeah, I know, right? Actually, if you count in all the electronics that you put into it, I'm probably reading honestly, I'm probably reading like 12 to 15 hours a day if you add in all of the texting, social media, news. Sometimes I put subtitles on the TV because my kids are like, "Ah!" So, so a lot of you, if you count that into a factor, I think you're probably doing 5+ as well. So the thing I miss about school is learning. My friends, we are social beings. How many times have you heard me say that this year? We are social beings, and we love being around each other, and this thing makes us be away from each other, and that's why it's so hard. What are your feelings about the amount of schoolwork you're getting? Most of you said it's about right. So that's good. We appreciate your feedback on that as well. How informed do you feel about COVID-19? Fairly informed. That's the biggest thing. Almost 30% of you said very informed, so that's good. We're trying to give you as much ammunition as possible. Now remember, grading update, and I'll go over this in our meeting tomorrow. Any new material you will find here will not be graded. Anything we post on Canvas will not be graded. Anything you see in PowerSchool show up will not be graded. All grades have been removed. Wah, 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 from third trimester grades. So a lot of you will go back and look at your essays. Your grades are taken off. I've been instructed to take your grades off of gradebook. Equity purposes, and also that everyone's passing on to the next grade because this third try is optional for 7th and 8th graders. Concept review here. Commodity, a raw material or a primary agricultural product that can be bought, sold, such as copper or coffee. What are some other commodities that we've talked about? I'll pause to let you think. What do we got? So, oil, crude oil. The things you put in your car, gas, diesel, oil. Unfortunately, a number of people losing their jobs in the U.S. has gone way up astronomically. So look at this unemployment record lows under President Trump and this administration. A lot of people on and at work. And then we hit this COVID-19 thing, and over 6 million people have been on unemployment. So some record highs here under the administration. So we've seen the best and the worst under Trump, which I think sometimes that's fairly fair and accurate to say. Another amazing effect of the pandemic is the drop in price of oil. Actually, if I move myself here, you'll see that oil is below zero. Now, how can that be? The oil companies are literally paying people to take oil. They're trying to get rid of their stock of oil, which means we've seen a huge drop in price at the pump, and your parents are extremely happy about that, especially if your parents are getting unemployment checks right now because they can't work. Oil and gas is at an all-time low. Why? Because people are staying home and not getting this illness, which is awesome. We're flattening that curve, which that alone, supply and demand in our economy, shows that we're doing across the nation a lot of things that we're being asked to do, which is pretty cool. But to see that global demand for oil drop to almost zero is pretty amazing. 2 videos for this week. Reynolds talking about opening up Iowa, 77 of the 99 counties, talking about soft opening where salons, restaurants will be able to reopen and actually house people, patrons, which is very interesting. And what is that going to look like, and what are the rules and stipulations for that? Secondly, oil futures. We talk about oil a lot in this class, choke points, how that drives our energy demands. Most of us still burn coal in our power plants in Iowa even, so that process, oil is very important. Fossil fuels are very, very important. 2 articles I'd like you to read here. Drop this down just a hair for you to see. Iowa governor talks about reopening states as cases soar. Now, again, we have to take this with a grain of salt. Most cases are being found in packing plants. These are people that are being forced to work. Now, I would say forced to work. It's not a sweatshop, but these are essential businesses that are staying open amidst the crisis, right? So what you have is we supply 1/3 of the nation's pork. We also supply roughly 1/3 of the nation's poultry, chicken, turkey, and people don't know that. And without Iowa producing, butchering, and processing these chickens and animals, we are shortening the supply chain. And that's why the food supply chain is breaking down. Tyson's Food closes, and other plants are closing amidst this crisis because people are being infected and they don't have other workers to step in. And so that becomes a serious issue, right? So A lot of that is yet to be seen about what the impact of this crisis is going to do to the overall economy itself. So these kind of give us an insight on that. Our Canvas questions I want you to answer on a separate document and then turn these into our assignment for this week. 1, why has the price of oil gone down so far, so fast? 2, how would you balance opening the economy with protecting people from COVID-19? This is if you were the governor or the leader of any state or country around the world. What effect will food production problems have on people in Iowa? Okay, and why are so many people losing their jobs around the country? Those are things I want us to think about, and hopefully these articles should answer those and give you, again, there's no right or wrong answers. We always ask you, please stay informed, right? These sources are vetted and well done, and we'll give you some good info on the crisis itself. Questions to think about this week. What other businesses do you feel are essential? Right now we say grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations. What businesses do you think should operate regardless, no matter what? Okay? So again, that's just something to think about. The other thing, put yourself in the shoes of the essential workers. If you're working at a grocery store, you're going to pay an hourly wage, and you're asked to work regular hours, no matter what, regardless of crisis. How would you feel? You know, if I see somebody coming in to Hy-Vee to buy a box of toothpicks, and you're browsing and picking up fruit snacks and, you know, things that are not essential or necessary, or that you could have ordered online and picked up at the storefront, how would you feel as an essential employee when people are doing that? And if you're doing that right now, hopefully you're not out and about with your parents, but if your parents are doing that, how can you maybe encourage them not to at this point in time? As some of our counties like Johnson are seeing increases in cases. Just review the COVID crisis across the world. 3 million confirmed cases. Good news is we have over 5 million recovered. Right now, total deaths are 212,000 people. In the U.S., we have about 56,000 to date. So 56,000, we have total cases of about 1 million. You know, here's also, statistics are great, but how are they classified, right? So in the U.S., let's say you are going into cardiac arrest in the ER, but you have a history of heart disease. You die on the table and they test you for COVID-19. If you're positive for COVID-19, but you died of a heart attack, you're not classified as a heart disease victim, you're classified as a COVID-19 victim. I use this as an extreme example, but let's say you were parachuting out of an airplane without a parachute. Jumping out of an airplane? Let's say that. Let's say you're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and you die. You hit the ground. The cause of death should be that you jumped out of an airplane without a parachute. But let's say you test positive for COVID-19. Technically, in roughly all the states across the country, because there's no guideline on how to classify victims, you could be classified as a COVID-19 death, even though you jumped out of an airplane without a parachute. So like I said, total deaths, take it with a grain of salt, because right now anyone who dies who tests positive or who thinks, this is what the CDC suggests, who thinks could have been a COVID-19 victim can be classified as such. So again, statistics, it's like, you know, now we can't really compare the U.S. to Spain, Italy, or China because we don't have the same standards. So you imagine how frustrating that is for experts across the world. How do we classify deaths and compare data if we're not using the same parameters? Final questions, things to think about. What are we going to learn from this whole deal, basically, is what I want you to say. So, you know, with that being said, you know, tomorrow we're going to have a Zoom, right? So I can answer any questions specifically there. Here's your sheet I would like you to fill out and just turn that into the assignment for this week on Canvas. Just answer these 4 questions. And again, a lot of you have done a pretty good job of it. The only thing I would say is make sure when you answer the question, don't make it one word. Explain your answer so that I know your whole thought process. All right? As always, we miss you. We love you. And keep on keeping on, Trojans.